for the physics material, when it comes to the primary bullet, this one you could enable it. It may not show right now, but eventually it'll be more solid, so that if you have a bullet that you want to be bouncy or something, you can use it this way. The projectile disable primary. So this is going to be kind of a core thing for how does the end state for a bullet actually occur, what happens with it. We have a hit right here option that explains it, and then we have a disable option here that explains it. So there's kind of two stages that come into play. The first thing is to say, when it comes to disabling, first off, show projectile image in game. If you don't want to show it, you can disable it. You just want it to be invisible in terms of the bullet itself. That may come into play where you have a player. I would just put it as a quick for instance here. You might have a player that's going to do punching, and the animation from the player is what you want to use. You don't want to use the actual projectile from the item you pick up, so you can actually turn it off. You can parent it to the socket so that, as for same kind of for instance, if you have a knife or you have a punching type behavior, kicking behavior, you can parent it so that when the player moves around, it stays where it's supposed to when they actually do that move. Stay on screen just simply means that when the bullet's done, if it's not going to be disabled, you can keep it on screen. Currently, it's checked by default to disable whenever the bullet is off screen. The image, if the image is no longer in the camera view, then it's going to just turn it off. So if you go back to where it was, it'll be gone. You have a disable after time as well, though. So if you have a bullet that's only supposed to travel for 1 second, you can say disable after that time. And then you can use a disable distance as well, so you can actually say how far out does it go before it actually goes away. Okay. So along with that one, the projectile hit primary, this is going to say once it actually hits a collision surface or a viable hit point surface, then all of a sudden what do you do with it? So by default we're just saying it disables, but you can say it stops, meaning that it just simply stops, so the force of the bullet no longer moves, is still on screen. You can stick it, so if you wanted to have like what we use with our sword, you can have it where it hits the player and it actually sticks to the player, and it just simply stays on the player. This one is also really good because you can use it for walls. If you wanted to shoot and have a sword or a spear stick into a wall and then use it to jump on. Do nothing means that it actually travels straight through, so it actually just doesn't even care about what it hits, it just keeps on going. Alright, the extra number of times it can hit is based on, similar to like this, is that if you want it to go through something 3, 4, 5 times before it's done, you could say you want it to be, just as a for instance here, if we wanted it to hit 10 times, and then it gets disabled, then you can do that. And this is extra number of times. Alright, so then we have the apply hit each time, and or none. It just applies it the first time, but it continues going through. You can hit the active player, meaning the player who is holding the weapon. And then you can hit any active collider. This means that whether the collider is, whether the object or tile has a hit point enabled, you can still hit it with the active collider. So this one typically is kind of a good one to put in, just because when you're playing, if you don't have it, it'll just travel right through the object because there's no collider and maybe there's no hit point, or there's a collider but no hit point. It would just continue. So this makes it so that at least in the environment you can still shoot things without actually applying damage to it. Alright, then you have a stick on hit and the push time. So again, if you use the stick option up here, you can say the stick on hit, just meaning how long are you going to push the object. So if you wanted to apply force to the object when you hit it, then you can apply some force with a time base on it. Alright, so those are going to be the kind of the core pieces for the ending of a projectile. Is how do they end, how do they recognize the final state for it.